Hello everybody, this is Patrick Gnarly. I just wanted to make a video explaining a lot of things and demonstrating how I survive as a musician on YouTube. There's no script to this video, so there's going to be a lot of pausing, a lot of stuttering, but at the same time, it'll be just me explaining in a candid way how I survive as a musician, especially on YouTube. So if you don't know anything about being a musician, I'll just kind of rewind time a little bit and explain how things used to be for me and now how they are at the current moment. So back in the day, let's say 10, 15 years ago, as a musician, the way that I would earn money and survive is by actually not being a musician. So it's very funny how that works. I think most musicians watching this will agree with me that you don't make money as a musician, you don't survive as a musician without supplemental things around you, whether that be working a day job, trying to sell things that are your own possessions, whether it be an amp, your car, things like that. Making sure you have a girlfriend who has a nice paying job, kind of leeching off of that. That's a thing musicians do. There's an old saying which is, what do you call a guitar player who doesn't have a girlfriend? Homeless. So I know that's kind of a ridiculous joke, but at the same time, there is some merit to it. The reason is because most musicians do not make enough money to survive off of their own music. And the reason for that is not just because being a musician is a low paying job, but you think about Napster back in the early 2000s to streaming music today, you don't make a lot of money off the music as is. And you think about record labels, things like that as well. They take a big slice of it. So as a musician, you actually make less money than you think, even the successful ones. I've seen, for example, one of my favorite bands, Every Time I Die, their guitar player, Andy Williams, he lived with his parents, and he's like in a very well-known band. And it just goes to show even the successful musicians don't really make a lot of money. So back in the day, what I would do is I would have a day job. I did have a girlfriend that I lived with. And you just try and figure out how to save enough money to do shows. You get your own equipment, you bring it, you haul it there in a minivan. You do what you can to make sure you can bring stuff and keep costs down because you're not going to make money. When I used to play shows, I probably made $50 and I had to split that between 3 other people. So you just don't make money. That's the fact of the matter. So you kind of have to understand that in the beginning as a musician, you're just not going to make enough money at all, period, ever. But nowadays, after so many years, I decided to kind of harness the engine of social media. And I joke about this, but there's some truth to it. I joke about this. I said that 2 years ago, as of the posting of this video, I decided to delete my mental health and focus on social media. It's kind of true. I was going through a pretty bad time. I'd gotten really sick, and I'd go to the hospital a couple times, and I'd lost my job, so that meant my health care was going away. And when I say lost my job, I didn't get fired. I got laid off because of COVID. A lot of businesses. I used to work in the tech sector a little bit. I worked with a internet service provider, and turns out half the revenue came from phones. And bottom line is people weren't using phones as much anymore. It was just internet. So a lot of people transitioned to Microsoft Teams, things like that. And with that happening, people just didn't make enough money as a telephone service, so they had to cut people. So there were 4 rounds of layoffs. I survived the first 3. And by the 4th one, I got laid off. So yeah, compounded, got sick, had to go find a different job, healthcare, all that stuff. So I actually lost my job, all that stuff happened. So it was kind of like a whirlwind. It was like a hurricane that destroyed everything for me, which means now that you have no home, you know what I mean? You can kind of go wherever you want. Now that you have no job, you can kind of set your own hours. Now that you have no health, you don't really have to worry about tomorrow because it's not guaranteed anyways. So it was kind of a perfect storm example of, okay, now you can just work on whatever you want. What do you want to do? You have a limited amount of time. You might not see tomorrow. What do you want to do? So I decided, I'm just going to make music. I'm going to play music. I'm going to do what I can. So I started making videos pouring a lot of my time into making videos and recording my music, trying to get that out there better. And you know what's really funny is the first 10 years of my career playing music and writing music, I had 6 records. You know what I mean? I had 6 albums I made just just my heart. Out of the kindness of my heart, I didn't get paid for it at all. So I made 6 records, and then when I decided to work on social media, and I had the time and the desire and the drive and the push to do that, that's when it actually started coming together, which is weird. So essentially what happened is I made all the music ahead of time, recorded it, and then I actually started showing people it. Did you think, well, weren't you playing music before? It's like, yeah, I was. I was playing shows. I was going to clubs and venues and things like that. Not even small ones too. We were doing pretty good. We got to play on college radio too, which was really nice. But you have to think, who the fuck listens to college radio? You know what I mean? Who listens to the radio in general? I mean, some people do, but most people don't. And with YouTube and Spotify and everything kind of out there, it was like, no wonder nobody listened to my music, because it really wasn't out there. You can't expect people to listen to your music if you're just playing or I shouldn't say small shows. If you're playing just shows, it sounds counterintuitive because, again, 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that is what you did. There was no Napster. There was no LimeWire. There was no Kazaa. All these programs where people shared audio and MP3 files, etc. That didn't exist, really. And so you had to go see live music, or you had to go buy CDs or vinyl or cassette tapes. So with the advent of the internet, a lot of things changed. And I think a lot of people, including myself, didn't realize that till way later. Thankfully, I did realize it. So after I started making videos, after I started, posting things online, people started listening to my music. People started paying attention to me. And then I started live streaming. And that's when everything kind of came together. So essentially what happened is I started being able to make enough money. It was bizarre. So around this time, I'd found another job. It was an intermittent job. It didn't really mean that much to me. I just needed a job. And while I was working there, the paycheck I was getting from people watching my live stream, just sending, donations. It's like, hey, this is really cool. Here's 5 cents. Here, this is really cool. Here's 50 cents. Or here's $1. Here's $5. Here's $10. It actually started paying better than my job. And I was like, wow, this actually makes a lot of sense. So of course it's a little reckless to do that, but and then I started getting paychecks from my my actual music that got played on Spotify and Apple Music and things like that. I started seeing it. Now it was dramatically less than the live streaming, but that's what started happening. And then eventually I got a part-time job. And then again, the part-time job started getting in the way of the music, which was like the main meat and potatoes of the situation. And I was like, okay, I'm leaving. And I remember, this was really funny, the manager at the second job that I got, the part-time job, I should say, the part-time job I got, the guy was basically like, what do you mean you want less hours? Like, don't you want like a job? Do you want to get paid? And the other manager was like, no, this is like his part-time thing. Like, this is not his main thing. And the guy was like, what? He's like, yeah, he gets paid to do live streaming and stuff. And he was like, huh. So it's very much like he went, oh, whoops. I shouldn't be threatening this guy. You know what I mean? I shouldn't be like pushing down on this guy, because like this, I could walk away at any moment. And I did. So anyways, so now that we have the history of it, because then I quit my job, my part-time job. Now I just did streaming full-time. And I've been doing that for the past year and 3 months now, year and a couple months. So bottom line is, that's the history. I went from not making any money, losing money playing music and recording and playing shows, to now it being all I do, and that's my main source of income. And it took me a long time to realize it. So I know a lot of people are going to jump to this part in the video, but this is how I actually survive as a musician, now that you have all that history out of the way. How I survive is you kind of have to have several different sources of income. So you can't just write music and just play music on Spotify and all the other streaming platforms. That is probably one of the lowest forms of income for me. Like Spotify pays at the most maybe $100 a month, if that. I think the most recent thing I got was like $80. But again, this is after several years of writing music and recording. This is just the promotion of it, me playing live stream music. So people that go to Spotify and all the other streaming platforms, I make tens of dollars, which is like, okay, that's fair, whatever. But again, that's me being an independent artist. I don't have a record label. There's nobody taking a cut of that, a major cut. So that's just going straight to me. So you got the live streaming part of it. That is the biggest part. We'll get to that though. But the music streaming part of it, that's a pretty low form. Another form of it is the merch store. If you didn't know, I have a merch store. If you go to the link that's in the channel description, I'm sure there's links on my profile, etc. You'll find it. If you click that link, it'll go to the merch store, and that's where people buy t-shirts. I should be wearing one of the t-shirts right now, but I'm not. But you can check out the merch store. There's t-shirts, there's mouse pads, there's mouse pads. There's sweaters, there's hoodies, things like that. Now, those don't cost me anything. When people go to the merch store, the way that I have it set up is that it's made to order. So if somebody wants a hoodie, they make the hoodie and send it. There's no stockpile of it. The reason I went with that is because obviously there's no investment. So if I didn't have enough money to invest in it, why would I, spend a bunch of money on something I wasn't sure was going to work? And it turns out for me, that's what works. Some people, what they do is they will buy like 500 hoodies and they'll have them already made and they'll get a much better deal and they can make more in profit. However, you have to sell all 500. So I've sold maybe, tens of shirts, dozens of shirts and hoodies and things like that, some more than others. So, this is another reason why I haven't made CDs yet, but we'll get to that. But it's because people that buy merch are awesome, but ultimately it doesn't really make a lot of money for the show, for me to survive. And I do want to make something very clear here too. When I say survive, I don't mean like I'm dying or something like that. But at the same time, it's not like I'm making a ton of money. And I mean that in every sense of it, because it's like I make just enough to keep going as my full-time job. There's been a couple moments where, for example, YouTube had a problem with their connection, the handshake between my live streaming software and YouTube, and I didn't work for a week. I would stream, but I didn't make any money because nobody was watching the show. And I was trying to figure out what was going on. I was pulling my hair out. I was like, this is terrible. What do I do? And so I thought I lost my job essentially. And YouTube even, I talked to YouTube 4 different times because when you're a YouTube partner, you can actually email them and you can send them chat messages, things like that. You can even call them. But they were like, it's working just fine, which was bullshit. Sorry. It's just not true. There was a problem and I fixed it. It was with my software. Again, the handshake between YouTube and OBS, which is the software I use, there was a problem. And once I reset it and I figured it out, and then everything went back to normal. But there was a very scary week, so I lost a week's amount of time and work. So I didn't make any money that week. Well, I did make some. Let me rephrase that. I did make some. Some people were noticing what was going on. So thank you to those folks who sent donations during that time. But that being said, there's no guarantee with it. So it gets really scary. Sometimes you make a bit more one month than other months, but yeah, it gets pretty, you get in hot water sometimes. So there's no guarantee with it. But anyways, back to the whole merch store and the CDs and things like that. So with the merch store, I don't make a ton of money with it, but it is some, and it does add up. So again, you have to have just a very wide sense, a very wide net to capture as much as you can. So the person that does want to buy a t-shirt or does want to buy a hoodie, they have the resource to do it. So that's out there. So what do we have so far? We have the live stream, which we'll get to. But we have the streaming of music. That's really number one. That's probably the lowest money I make, which is, again, really sad. But that's how it works. And then there's the merch store, which I make probably just about as much, maybe a little less. But that shows up every now and then. And then I also get ad revenue, which, by the way, just you watching this video is helping out the show. So if you've seen an ad or two already, or if you're using ad blocker, make sure you turn that off if you want to support YouTube creators or buy YouTube Premium. I know it's annoying. I have YouTube Premium because I can't stand ads anymore, but at least you know that the money that you send to YouTube for YouTube Premium does go to the YouTube creators. So you do get paid for that. So if you want to help support channels and YouTube and musicians and things like that, you got to make sure you're either sending them money or you're watching ads. Those are the two ways to do it. If you're not watching ads, they're not making money. So, so YouTube videos, I do have a couple YouTube videos. I do see a couple bucks on that. That is, again, very, very low. We're talking single-digit dollars on certain videos. Some are just a couple cents, but hey, again, it adds up. I already made the video. I don't have to do anything with it again. So people watch it, just like this video, you make enough money. It all adds up. That net widens. And then you get to the vinyl sales that I have. I have a vinyl out there. And the vinyl is a little expensive. It's, when I say a little expensive, I mean like it's not like $5, it's not $10, it's not $20, but you have to think about shipping. They have to make the vinyl. They have to send it to you. I'm an independent artist, so they can't make the 10,000 copies of it for them to, like, you know, drop the cost down for a bulk sale. They just don't do that. I could have done that, and if I had done that, I would have bankrupted myself, because a lot of people said, and this is a lesson you'll learn too if you're a musician, a lot of people say that they'll do something. The formula that I use in my head is, and they're not always going to do it. The formula I use in my head is, if 100 people say they're going to show up to a show, expect 20 people to show up. Because you got to think, and I don't blame anybody, but if you want to go do something, it's easy to say yes. It's harder to get in your car, drive to the venue on a certain day at a certain time, and show up and stay and pay for it. It's very difficult to do all those things. And every step in the process, you lose a certain amount of people. So for every 100 people that want to go do something, if you're lucky, 20 of those people will show up. And then of those 20 people, it's like, how many people are actually going to buy? You know, how many people are going to support? How many people are going to do what they can? So as a musician, for me to survive, I couldn't be playing shows. It just didn't make sense. So when I made vinyl, I remember, because people were like, no, I want you to make vinyl, make something. I want a physical copy. Lots of people asked for it. And we've sold, again, double digits of the vinyl, which is like, cool, thank you. For all the people that bought it, I did make a special edition for those who actually did buy it. So I was very happy with that. We still haven't sold out of those. So I had an option between the two situations, which was have a made to order, makes less profit, but it's easier for everybody, including myself, vinyl, or buy like 1,000 copies, 500 copies, whatever, however many, spend the money up front, and then when people bought the vinyl, they would get it for cheaper, and I would get more money per vinyl. That would have absolutely been the worst idea. So we haven't even sold 100. So, all right, and again, that's not shade towards people, but again, if 100 people say do something and you only sell 20, it's not a good look. Which brings me to why I haven't made the CDs yet. I didn't make CDs yet because it takes a lot of work to get everything set up and get everything going. And if people aren't buying something that they said they were going to, it's like, I'm not going to spend the time, at least not yet, to have that available. So yeah, that's why I haven't made CDs of certain albums and things like that. It's because it's a lot of work, and I don't want to put that work on when I have an album coming out and stuff like that. So anyways, so yeah, so we got the merch store, we got the music streaming, there's the vinyl, and I think another one was the Patreon. Now, the Patreon is like a pure form of profit for the show, because even though I type things in there, I make a lot of content in there. If you haven't gone to the Patreon, lowest tier is $1, which again is very cheap for most people. So if 100 people join the Patreon, that's $100 basically in almost pure profit for the show, for my music to continue. And you actually get stuff out of that. So everything I've posted before, you know, I can't remember how many posts. There's like got to be 100 posts so far. There's a lot. And a lot of them are, for example, lyric descriptions. So when I actually have the lyrics and explanations for things, I don't put everything in there, but I do explain a lot of stuff. So it's a lot of like interviews, essentially, private things. I posted the newest album cover that isn't out yet, but it's probably out by the time you watch this video. So there's a lot of hidden things there. I ask people what they want for future videos. I get people's input on things. There's a lot of things that happen on the Patreon that are just like, it's bonus. Do you want to support it? Here, you get rewarded for it. So the Patreon's been nice for that. That's been pretty consistent. Again, I don't make a ton of money from that. That's also in the double digits, but again, it adds up. You know, if somebody's been subscribed for a year, That's $12 if they're at $1. And then you think 5 other people, it adds up. So, and then some people are at the $5 tier. Some people are at higher tiers than that. There was a person, for example, for a while, who was at the $100 tier. I had a $100 tier for a while just to see if somebody would do it. I said, hey, you don't have to do this. This is just purely for, me thanking you. And it just helps out the show. And somebody did that for a couple months, and that really helped out. So the Patreon has been really helpful too. So if you can have somebody join something that they can get a resource and they get information from, and they have to pay for it, but even if it's a small amount, it all adds up. So again, we have all these resources so far, all these resources on how to survive as a musician. Because if you just did one of them, I don't think you could. You have to do all of them. But the number one way that I survive as a musician is because people send direct donations. They'll say, hey, I like the show. I like what you're doing. Here's $5. Have $5. Or somebody really likes the show and they're really having a good time. And they say, hey, here's, $10. Here's $50. Here's $25. Here's $100. Here's $150. People have done that. And it shocks me, absolutely astounds me at the generous nature of some people out there, because I have to deal with a lot of people. This is another thing too, how to survive as a musician, how I survive as a musician at least, is that there's a lot of cruel people out there. There really are. There's a lot of people that are just very rude, and they attack you for no reason. It's because they can get away with it. There's no repercussions online. I've said this if you watch my show. There's a lot of people out there that will attack you. They'll say mean things. They're very insulting. And I even had a guy who there's a little bit of a legal thing going on right now, that sucks. So I can't get into that. But the bottom line is that some people will troll you, and it's only because they are unhappy with themselves. They don't have a positive outlet for themselves. So, like for example, if somebody somebody has a girlfriend, a boyfriend, if somebody has a loving family, if somebody has a good job, somebody has a great hobby, somebody has friends, I really don't think they're going to act like that. So it's just a bunch of really weird, people in bad situations. They're just taking out on other people. Because you got to think, why waste your time attacking people when you could just do something that makes you happy? You know what I mean? And somebody's probably going to say, well, it makes me happy to attack people. It's like, okay, well, that's psychopaths. But anyways, you see, so for every person that I've noticed that's extraordinarily rude for no reason, again, I'm just playing music, people attack me. There's been so many great people out there. There's been so many wonderfully generous people out there that just make the show go. Let me put it this way. So for me to survive as a musician, it's taken some very, very select, wonderful people who make the show happen. So I've had millions of views. Millions. I think the total was, it was at 6 million over the past 2 years. And that's counting all the small shows, all the small videos, things that I do. When I was on the other streaming platform, TikTok, I started out on there and then I moved to YouTube. It's just people pop in, they look around, they go, oh, what's going on? And then they leave. That's the majority of people. They just want to see what's going on, and that counts as a view, and then they leave. But 6 million people have seen my show. Of those 6 million people, I've had maybe 20 or 30 people over the last 2 years who have literally said, I will make sure this can keep happening. Please keep going. Whatever it takes. Here's funding. Here's support. I will moderate for you. I will watch the Discord. I will check out the videos. I'll listen to stuff ahead of time. Whatever it takes, keep going. And without those people, there would be no show. And I've said this multiple times. And it sounds bizarre to say out loud, but like all 6 million of those people, roughly, they would not have been able to be shown what I have without those, double-digit amount of people. And I honor them, a lot of them, on my guitars. I put their names on my guitars and things like that so that people can see, hey, check this person out. This person's really cool. And it's important to reward those people because, again, a lot of people just don't care and they'll swipe by, which, hey, they can do that. They're more than welcome to. The people that attack me, again, losers who are unhappy with their own lives, who have nothing to make positive, so they just make negative. But the point I'm trying to make here is that I survive as a musician not because of my music, not because of, the merch that I sell, not because of the Patreon, not because of these videos that I make that people watch and there's ad revenue. It is almost entirely on the shoulders of these giants that I can stand on so I can see further. You know what I mean? There are these people out there that truly support things the best that they can, and they go, how do I make this keep going? Make it happen, and it's amazing to me that anybody would support me like that. Because again, 10 years ago, friends and family that I know would show up, but again, they'd be like, hey, we're here, we're watching the show, okay, we gotta go, bye. And that wouldn't help out. I mean, it's nice, but let me put it this way. The handful of people that watch my show and support it to the nth degree, they have given so much of their time and their money specifically too, to make sure this happens, that the first 10 years of my career might as well not even exist. I remember the first record that I tried to record with my old band. I remember it cost $500 because we had to save money for every show. And I had to convince my band every time, like, hey, let's not buy beer. Let's not go crazy. Can we put the money into a bucket and then we'll finally record our first EP? We wanted a couple songs on it and we found somebody that could record us. And again, $500 at that time. I mean, that was like, what, a paycheck for some people? $500, that is as much as we basically made over a year. $500 from saving up shows. You got to pay for your gas. You got to get food. You got to drive there. You got to drive back. You got to spend time instead of with your family or working. Opportunities, all these opportunities. And I made so little, but I did make the music. I made the music. That was the important part. But the point I'm trying to make here is I survive as a musician not because of all these like small things. It's all of it together. Plus the people that are just being generous and going, hey, I want this to keep going. Make it happen. So that's how I survive as a musician. And I hope that anybody watching this kind of gets a little bit of like a backstage, not backstage, that's kind of lame, but kind of gets some more information, because you watch a YouTuber, you watch a musician, you watch somebody on Twitch, whatever it is, you're only getting a small sliver, right, of what's actually going on in their lives. You're only getting a small amount of information. And I think this kind of sums it up pretty well with how I survive as a musician. And I think anybody who wants to become a musician, this is the reality, This is the reality, is that you're going to spend a lot of time not doing well. There's an old saying, which is, if you want to starve an artist, cover your trash. So for a long time, that's how I survived as much as I could. And it wasn't even based on music. It was based off me doing things around music. But now I'm pretty happy. I get a roof over my head. I get heating. I get my fridge is full. I get to spend moments like this, talking to people and recording things and making music, making my next record. And it's because there's people out there that care. You got to find those people that care. That's the bottom line. You got to spread the message as far as you can. You got to get a wide net and make sure people can check it out. Because if you are not out there in the light, how are they supposed to listen to you, in the dark like that? So you got to put yourself out there. So, but yeah, like I said, just by watching this video, you've been helping out the show. Again, I'm sure there's been ads that have popped up, or if you're using ad blocker, remember, you're not helping out the show if you do stuff like that. And I know it's annoying, but yeah, the whole point I'm trying to make here is that there are ways to support people without spending money. You can watch videos that they have like this. You can just go listen to their music. You can just go check out their merch store and just take a look at it and just tell people, because I'm sure other people might go, oh, what is this? And maybe you're not, supporting it, but maybe somebody else will. So that's what I always say too, is like, you don't have to actually do the work necessarily to support something, but you can find people who can. There are people that sponsor things by finding sponsors, if that makes sense. So anyways, I know this was an unscripted video. It's just me kind of talking. So I hope it's okay. But at the same time, I think it needed to be said. So if you want to support the show, you kind of already did by watching this video. But if you want to support it further, like I said, you can listen to my music. You can check out the merch store. check out the Patreon, pick up a vinyl. You can just keep watching videos like this. You can come back to this anytime you want, and it'll help out the show. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you had a great time with it. I hope this was interesting, and stay gnarly. I'm Patrick Gnarly. My band's name is Finals. Check it out sometime. All right. Stay gnarly. Bye-bye.